Section 2 of Tarzan the Terrible by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This recording is in the public domain. Recording by Don W. Jenkins. Chapter 2. To the Death. In the moment of discovery, Tarzan saw that the creature was almost a counterpart of his companion in size and conformation, with the exception that his body was entirely clothed with a coat of shaggy black hair, which almost concealed his features, while his harness and weapons were similar to those of the creature he had attacked. Ere Tarzan could prevent, the creature had struck the ape man's companion a blow upon the head with his knotted club that felled him, unconscious, to the earth. But before he could inflict further injury upon his defenseless prey, the ape man had closed with him. Instantly Tarzan realized that he was locked with a creature of almost superhuman strength. The sinewy fingers of a powerful hand sought his throat, while the other lifted the bludgeon above his head. But if the strength of the hairy attacker was great, great too was that of his smooth-skinned antagonist. Swinging a single terrific blow with clenched fist to the point of the other's chin, Tarzan momentarily staggered his assailant, and then his own fingers closed upon the shaggy throat, as with the other hand he seized the wrist of the arm that swung the club. With equal celerity he shot his right leg behind the shaggy brute and throwing his weight forward hurled the thing over his hip heavily to the ground, at the same time precipitating his own body upon the other's chest. With the shock of the impact the club fell from the brute's hand and Tarzan's hold was wrenched from its throat. Instantly the two were locked in a death-like embrace. Though the creature bit at Tarzan, the latter was quickly aware that this was not a particularly formidable method of offense or defense, since its canines were scarcely more developed than his own. The thing that he had principally to guard against was the sinuous tail which sought steadily to wrap itself about his throat, and against which experience had afforded him no defense. Struggling and snarling, the two rolled growling about the sward at the foot of the tree, first one on top and then the other, but each more occupied at present in defending his throat from the other's choking grasp than in aggressive offensive tactics. But presently the ape man saw his opportunity, and as they rolled about he forced the creature closer and closer to the pool, upon the banks of which the battle was progressing. At last they lay upon the very verge of the water, and now it remained for Tarzan to precipitate them both beneath the surface, but in such a way that he might remain on top. At the same instant there came within range of Tarzan's vision, just behind the prostrate form of his companion, the crouching, devil-faced figure of the striped saber-tooth hybrid, eyeing him with snarling, malevolent face. Almost simultaneously Tarzan's shaggy antagonist discovered the menacing figure of the great cat. Immediately he ceased his belligerent activities against Tarzan and, jabbering and chattering to the ape man, he tried to disengage himself from Tarzan's hold, but in such a way that indicated that as far as he was concerned the battle was over. Appreciating the danger to his unconscious companion and being anxious to protect him from the saber-tooth, the ape man released his hold upon his adversary and together the two rose to their feet. Drawing his knife, Tarzan moved slowly toward the body of his companion, expecting that his recent antagonist would grasp the opportunity for escape. To his surprise, however, the beast, after regaining its club, advanced at his side. The great cat, flattened upon its belly, remained motionless except for twitching tail and snarling lips, where it lay perhaps 50 feet beyond the body of the pithecanthropus. As Tarzan stepped over the body of the latter he saw the eyelids quiver and open, and in his heart felt a strange sense of relief that the creature was not dead, and a realization that without his suspecting it there had arisen within his savage bosom a bond of attachment for this strange new friend. Tarzan continued to approach the saber-tooth, nor did the shaggy beast at his right lag behind. Closer and closer they came until at a distance of about 20 feet the hybrid charged. Its rush was directed toward the shaggy manlike ape who halted in his tracks with upraised bludgeon to meet the assault. Tarzan, on the contrary, leaped forward and with a celerity second not even to that of the swift-moving cat, he threw himself headlong upon him as might a Rugby tackler on an American gridiron. His right arm circled the beast's neck in front of the right shoulder, his left behind the left foreleg, and so great was the force of the impact that the two rolled over and over several times upon the ground, the cat screaming and clawing to liberate itself that it might turn upon its attacker, the man clinging desperately to his hold. Seemingly the attack was one of mad, senseless ferocity, unguided by either reason or skill. Nothing, however, could have been farther from the truth than such an assumption, since every muscle in the ape man's giant frame obeyed the dictates of the cunning mind that long experience had trained to meet every exigency of such an encounter. The long, powerful legs, though seemingly inextricably entangled with the hind feet of the clawing cat, ever as by a miracle escaped the raking talons, and yet at just the proper instant, in the midst of all the rolling and tossing, they were where they should be to carry out the ape man's plan of offense. So that on the instant that the cat believed it had won the mastery of its antagonist, it was jerked suddenly upward as the ape man rose to his feet, holding the striped back close against his body as he rose and forcing it backward until it could but claw the air helplessly. Instantly the shaggy black rushed in with drawn knife which it buried in the beast's heart. For a few moments Tarzan retained his hold, but when the body had relaxed in final dissolution, he pushed it from him, and the two, who had formerly been locked in mortal combat, stood facing each other across the body of the common foe. Tarzan waited, ready either for peace or war. Presently two shaggy black hands were raised. The left was laid upon its own heart, and the right extended until the palm touched Tarzan's breast. It was the same form of friendly salutation with which the pithecanthropus had sealed his alliance with the ape man, and Tarzan, glad of every ally he could win in this strange and savage world, quickly accepted the proffered friendship. At the conclusion of the brief ceremony, Tarzan, glancing in the direction of the hairless pithecanthropus, discovered that the latter had recovered consciousness and was sitting erect, watching them intently. He now rose slowly, and at the same time the shaggy black turned in his direction and addressed him in what evidently was their common language. The hairless one replied, and the two approached each other slowly. Tarzan watched interestedly the outcome of their meeting. They halted a few paces apart, first one and then the other speaking rapidly but without apparent excitement, each occasionally glancing or nodding towards Tarzan, indicating that he was to some extent the subject of their conversation. Presently they advanced again until they met, whereupon was repeated the brief ceremony of alliance which had previously marked the cessation of hostilities between Tarzan and the black. They then advanced toward the ape man, addressing him earnestly as though endeavoring to convey to him some important information. Presently, however, they gave it up as an unprofitable job and, resorting to sign language, conveyed to Tarzan that they were proceeding upon their way together and were urging him to accompany them. As the direction they indicated was a route which Tarzan had not previously traversed, he was extremely willing to accede to their request, as he had determined thoroughly to explore this unknown land before definitely abandoning search for Lady Jane therein. For several days their way led through the foothills parallel to the lofty range towering above. Often were they menaced by the savage denizens of this remote fastness, and occasionally Tarzan glimpsed weird forms of gigantic proportions amidst the shadows of the nights. On the third day they came upon a large natural cave in the face of a low cliff, at the foot of which tumbled one of the numerous mountain brooks that watered the plain below and fed the morasses in the lowlands at the country's edge. Here the three took up their temporary abode, where Tarzan's instruction in the language of his companions progressed more rapidly than while on the march. The cave gave evidence of having harbored other man-like forms in the past. Remnants of a crude rock fireplace remained, and the walls and ceiling were blackened with the smoke of many fires. Scratched in the soot, and sometimes deeply into the rock beneath, were strange hieroglyphics, and the outlines of beasts and birds and reptiles, some of the latter of weird form, suggesting the extinct creatures of Jurassic times. Some of the more recently made hieroglyphics Tarzan's companions read with interest and commented upon, and then with the points of their knives they too added to the possibly age-old record of the blackened walls. Tarzan's curiosity was aroused, but the only explanation at which he could arrive was that he was looking upon possibly the world's most primitive hotel register. At least it gave him a further insight into the development of the strange creatures with which fate had thrown him. Here were men with the tails of monkeys, one of them as hair covered as any fur bearing brute of the lower orders, and yet it was evident that they possessed not only a spoken but a written language. The former he was slowly mastering, and at this new evidence of unlooked for civilization in creatures possessing so many of the physical attributes of beasts, Tarzan's curiosity was still further piqued, and his desire quickly to master their tongue strengthened, with the result that he fell to with even greater assiduity to the task he had set himself. Already he knew the names of his companions and the common names of the fauna and flora with which they had most often come in contact. Ta den, he of the hairless, white skin, having assumed the role of tutor, prosecuted his task with a singleness of purpose that was reflected in his pupil's rapid mastery of Ta den's mother tongue. Om at, the hairy black, also seemed to feel that there rested upon his broad shoulders a portion of the burden of responsibility for Tarzan's education, with the result that either one or the other of them was almost constantly coaching the ape man during his waking hours. The result was only what might have been expected, a rapid assimilation of the teachings to the end that before any of them realized it, communication by word of mouth became an accomplished fact. Tarzan explained to his companions the purpose of his mission, but neither could give him any slightest thread of hope to weave into the fabric of his longing. Never had there been in their country a woman such as he described, nor any tailless man other than himself that they ever had seen. "I have been gone from A lur while Bu, the moon, has eaten 7 times," said Ta den. "Many things may happen in 7 times 28 days, but I doubt that your woman could have entered our country across the terrible morasses which even you found an almost insurmountable obstacle, and if she had, could she have survived the perils that you already have encountered beside those of which you have yet to learn? Not even our own women venture into the savage lands beyond the cities." "A lur, Light City, City of Light," mused Tarzan, translating the word into his own tongue. "And where is A lur?" he asked. "Is it your city, Ta den, and Om at's?" "It is mine," replied the hairless one, "but not Om at's. The Waz don have no cities. They live in the trees of the forests and the caves of the hills. Is it not so, black man?" he concluded, turning toward the hairy giant beside him. "Yes," replied Om at. "We Waz don are free. Only the Ho don imprison themselves in cities. I would not be a white man." Tarzan smiled. Even here was the racial distinction between white man and black man, Ho don and Waz don. Not even the fact that they appeared to be equals in the matter of intelligence made any difference. One was white and one was black, and it was easy to see that the white considered himself superior to the other. One could see it in his quiet smile. "Where is A lur?" Tarzan asked again. "You are returning to it?" "It is beyond the mountains," replied Ta den. "I do not return to it, not yet, not until Ko tan is no more." "Ko tan?" queried Tarzan. "Ko tan is king," explained the pithecanthropus. "He rules this land. I was one of his warriors. I lived in the palace of Ko tan and there I met O lo a, his daughter. We loved, like starlight and I, but Ko tan would have none of me. He sent me away to fight with the men of the village of Dakat, who had refused to pay his tribute to the king, thinking that I would be killed, for Dakat is famous for his many fine warriors. And I was not killed. Instead I returned victorious with the tribute and with Dakat himself my prisoner. But Ko tan was not pleased because he saw that O lo a loved me even more than before, her love being strengthened and fortified by pride in my achievement. Powerful is my father, Ja don, the Lion Man, chief of the largest village outside of A lur. Him Ko tan hesitated to affront, and so he could not but praise me for my success, though he did it with half a smile. But you do not understand. It is what we call a smile that moves only the muscles of the face and affects not the light of the eyes. It means hypocrisy and duplicity. I must be praised and rewarded. What better than that he reward me with the hand of O lo a, his daughter?
But no, he saves O lo a for Bu lot, son of Mo sar, the chief whose great grandfather was king and who thinks that he should be king. Thus would Ko tan appease the wrath of Mo sar and win the friendship of those who think with Mo sar that Mo sar should be king. But what reward shall repay the faithful Ta den? Greatly do we honor our priests. Within the temples even the chiefs and the king himself bow down to them. No greater honor could Ko tan confer upon a subject who wished to be a priest, but I do not so wish. Priests other than the high priest must become eunuchs, for they may never marry. It was O lo a herself who brought word to me that her father had given the commands that would set in motion the machinery of the temple. A messenger was on his way in search of me to summon me to Ko tan's presence. To have refused the priesthood once it was offered me by the king would have been to have affronted the temple and the gods. That would have meant death. But if I did not appear before Ko tan I would not have to refuse anything. O lo a and I decided that I must not appear. It was better to fly, carrying in my bosom a shred of hope, than to remain and, with my priesthood, abandon hope forever. Beneath the shadows of the great trees that grow within the palace grounds I pressed her to me for, perhaps, the last time, and then, lest by ill fate I meet the messenger, I scaled the great wall that guards the palace and passed through the darkened city. My name and rank carried me beyond the city gate. Since then I have wandered far from the haunts of the Ho don, but strong within me is the urge to return, if even but to look from without her walls upon the city that holds her most dear to me, and again to visit the village of my birth, to see again my father and my mother."
"But the risk is too great?" asked Tarzan.
"It is great, but not too great," replied Ta den. "I shall go."
"And I shall go with you if I may," said the ape man, "for I must see this city of light, this A lur of yours, and search there for my lost mate even though you believe that there is little chance that I find her. And you, Om at, do you come with us?" "Why not?" asked the hairy one. "The lairs of my tribe lie in the crags above A lur, and though Es sat, our chief, drove me out I should like to return again, for there is a she there upon whom I should be glad to look once more and who would be glad to look upon me. Yes, I will go with you. Es sat feared that I might become chief, and who knows but that Es sat was right. But Pan at lee, it is she I seek first even before a chieftainship." "We three then shall travel together," said Tarzan.
"And fight together," added Ta den, "the three as one," and as he spoke he drew his knife and held it above his head.
"The three as one," repeated Om at, drawing his weapon and duplicating Ta den's act. "It is spoken." "The three as one," cried Tarzan of the Apes. "To the death!" and his blade flashed in the sunlight.
"Let us go then," said Om at. "My knife is dry and cries aloud for the blood of Es sat."
The trail over which Ta den and Om at led, and which scarcely could be dignified even by the name of trail, was suited more to mountain sheep, monkeys, or birds than to man, but the three that followed it were trained to ways which no ordinary man might essay. Now, upon the lower slopes, it led through the dense forests, where the ground was so matted with fallen trees and over rioting vines and brush that the way held always to the swaying branches high above the tangle. Again it skirted yawning gorges whose slippery faced rocks gave but momentary foothold even to the bare feet that lightly touched them as the three leaped chamois like from one precarious foothold to the next. Dizzy and terrifying was the way that Om at chose across the summit as he led them around the shoulder of a towering crag that rose a sheer 2,000 feet of perpendicular rock above a tumbling river. And when at last they stood upon comparatively level ground again, Om at turned and looked at them both intently, and especially at Tarzan of the Apes.
"You will both do," he said. "You are fit companions for Om at, the Waz don."
"What do you mean?" asked Tarzan.
"I brought you this way," replied the black, "to learn if either lacked the courage to follow where Om at led. It is here that the young warriors of Es sat come to prove their courage. And yet, though we are born and raised upon cliff sides, it is considered no disgrace to admit that Pastar ul Ved, the father of the mountains, has defeated us, for of those who try it only a few succeed. The bones of the others lie at the feet of Pastar ul Ved."
Ta den laughed. "I would not care to come this way often," he said.
"No," replied Om at, "but it has shortened our journey by at least a full day. So much the sooner shall Tarzan look upon the valley of Jad ben Otho. Come."
And he led the way upward along the shoulder of Pastar ul Ved until there lay spread below them a scene of mystery and of beauty, a green valley girt by towering cliffs of marble whiteness, a green valley dotted by deep blue lakes and crossed by the blue trail of a winding river. In the center a city of the whiteness of the marble cliffs, a city which even at so great a distance evidenced a strange yet artistic architecture. Outside the city there were visible about the valley isolated groups of buildings, sometimes one, again two and three and four in a cluster, but always of the same glaring whiteness and always in some fantastic form. About the valley the cliffs were occasionally cleft by deep gorges, verdure filled, giving the appearance of green rivers rioting downward toward a central sea of green.
"Jad pele ad Jad ben Otho,"
murmured Tarzan in the tongue of the pithecanthropi.
"the valley of the great god. It is beautiful." "Here in A lur lives Ko tan the king, ruler over all Pal ul don," said Ta den.
"And here in these gorges live the Waz don," exclaimed Om at, "who do not acknowledge that Ko tan is the ruler over all the land of man."
Ta den smiled and shrugged.
"We will not quarrel, you and I," he said to Om at, "over that which all the ages have not proved sufficient time in which to reconcile the Ho don and the Waz don, but let me whisper to you a secret, Om at. The Ho don live together in greater or less peace under one ruler so that when danger threatens them they face the enemy with many warriors, for every fighting Ho don of Pal ul don is there. But you, Waz don, how is it with you? You have a dozen kings who fight not only with the Ho don but with one another. When one of your tribes goes forth upon the fighting trail even against the Ho don it must leave behind sufficient warriors to protect its women and its children from the neighbors upon either hand. When we want eunuchs for the temples or servants for the fields or the homes we march forth in great numbers upon one of your villages. You cannot even flee, for upon either side of you are enemies, and though you fight bravely we come back with those who will presently be eunuchs in the temples and servants in our fields and homes. So long as the Waz don are thus foolish the Ho don will dominate and their king will be king of Pal ul don."
"Perhaps you are right," admitted Om at. "It is because our neighbors are fools, each thinking that his tribe is the greatest and should rule among the Waz don. They will not admit that the warriors of my tribe are the bravest and our shes the most beautiful."
Ta den grinned.
"Each of the others presents precisely the same arguments that you present, Om at," he said. "Which, my friend, is the strongest bulwark of defense possessed by the Ho don?"
"Come," exclaimed Tarzan, "such discussions often lead to quarrels and we three must have no quarrels. I, of course, am interested in learning what I can of the political and economic conditions of your land. I should like to know something of your religion, but not at the expense of bitterness between my only friends in Pal ul don. Possibly, however, you hold to the same god?"
"There indeed we do differ,"
cried Om at, somewhat bitterly and with a trace of excitement in his voice.
"Differ!" almost shouted Ta den. "And why should we not differ? Who could agree with the preposterous—"
"Stop!" cried Tarzan. "Now indeed have I stirred up a hornet's nest. Let us speak no more of matters political or religious."
"That is wiser," agreed Om at, "but I might mention for your information that the one and only god has a long tail."
"It is sacrilege!" cried Ta den, laying his hand upon his knife. "Jad ben Otho has no tail."
"Stop!"
shrieked Om at, springing forward, but instantly Tarzan interposed himself between them. "Enough!" he snapped. "Let us be true to our oaths of friendship that we may be honorable in the sight of God in whatever form we conceive him."
"You are right, tailless one," said Ta den. "Come, Om at, let us look after our friendship and ourselves, secure in the conviction that Jad ben Otho is sufficiently powerful to look after himself."
"Done," agreed Om at. "But—"
"No buts, Om at," admonished Tarzan. The shaggy black shrugged his shoulders and smiled.
"Shall we make our way down toward the valley?" he asked. "The gorge below us is uninhabited. That to the left contains the caves of my people. I would see Pan at lee once more. Ta den would visit his father in the valley below, and Tarzan seeks entrance to A lur in search of the mate that would be better dead than in the clutches of the Ho don priests of Jad ben Otho. Shall we proceed?"
"Let us remain together as long as possible," urged Ta den. "You, Om at, must seek Pan at lee by night and by stealth, for three, even we three, may not hope to overcome Es sat and all his warriors. At any time may we go to the village where my father is chief, for Ja don always will welcome the friends of his son; but for Tarzan to enter A lur is another matter, though there is a way and he has the courage to put it to the test. Listen, come close, for Jad ben Otho has keen ears and this he must not hear." And with his lips close to the ears of his companions, Ta den, the tall tree, son of Ja don, the Lion man, unfolded his daring plan. And at the same moment, 100 miles away, a lithe figure, naked but for a loin cloth and weapons, moved silently across a thorn covered, waterless steppe, searching always along the ground before him with keen eyes and sensitive nostrils. End of Chapter 2. Read by Don W. Jenkins, Rancho San Diego, California. shaggybark.blogspot.com